Let's talk investments. Did you know that foreign investment into Australia is at the highest point that it's ever been in the last 20 years? Hey guys, Francisco Gallardo, property advisor from InvestCasa, and today we will be talking about foreign investment into Australia. Who is a foreign buyer? What is the process for buying a property? Why are people choosing to invest in Australia? Where is the money coming from? And other tips and information that you need to know. If you're a foreign investor, this video is for you. So let's dive in. In the last 12 months, total investment into Australian real estate was about $5 billion worth of property. Now, if you take into account an average property of 800,000, that is roughly about 6,000 purchases. So 6,000 purchases completed in the last 12 months from foreign nationals in Australia. Now, where is this money coming from? Why are all these people investing or buying property in Australia? Most of the money or most of these investors come from China, Hong Kong, and India. Why are people choosing to invest in Australia? I mean, Australia historically has been insulated from recessions, political pressures from other countries, and it's a very stable economy. Apart from the fact that it's quite far away from the world, Australia has a very strong economy based in mining, agriculture, manufacturing, services, and tourism. So historically, Australia is a country that is regarded as, not as a safe haven, but is regarded as a place to invest your money. In the long term, you'll have very little volatility compared to other parts of the world. Most of this money is coming from Asia and India because they're the closest countries to Australia. And a lot of these people are coming to Australia to study. There's a lot of international students that move here to study, and their parents buy properties for these international students into Australia so that they not only protect the capital and preserve it, but they're also generate a return because the Australian property market has been in line with any other asset class across the globe, generating anywhere from 7 to 8% compounding growth per annum. So it's been a very stable market and a good way of saving and generating good returns. What are the regulations and what can you buy as a foreign buyer if you're looking to buy property into Australia? So let's start with what type of buyer you are. Now, you could be a foreign investor or a foreign buyer, but let's define what is a foreign investor and a foreign buyer. You could be a foreign buyer, someone that is migrating into Australia and wants to buy their principal place of residence. So you want to move into Australia and you want to find your house or your first home to live in. Now, there are some rules or regulations as to what you can buy depending on the visa that you have. Foreign investor or foreign buyer or foreign national is someone that is not an Australian citizen. So let's say scenario number one, you're a family, you want to move into Australia, you arrive in Australia, you want to buy a house. There are some regulations around what you're allowed to buy and the process in place. So let's talk briefly about that is scenario number one, which is a family moving into Australia, migrating and wanting to buy a house to live in. Now, depending on your visa requirements, but let's say, to keep it simple for the purpose of the video, you're not an Australian citizen or a permanent resident, all right? There are multiple types of visas, but let's just keep it simple, right? And I invite you to read into or do some research or on your research into the Foreign Investment Review Board website or the ATO website where you can find more information. But for the purpose of the video, let's just keep it simple. You're a foreign buyer, you're moving into Australia with your family, you want to buy a house. Now, in Australia, there are different types of houses. You can either buy an established dwelling, which is typically an older style house, houses that are already built, character homes built in the 1960s, 70s, 1930s. Those are the beautiful older style homes that are located in the inner CBDs or inner areas or in the suburban areas. There are some rules and regulations whether you can actually buy this property. Yes, you can, but you will have to apply for Foreign Investment Review Board application, which depends on the price of the property. And on top of that, you will have to pay surcharge for buying this property. So two main fees: application to the Foreign Investment Review Board and an extra surcharge for buying this property. That is in simple terms. I needed to cover that space as well because I do want to talk about the investment side of things. So let's say you're an investor now, you are in China, you're in Europe, you're in South America, and you're thinking of investing into Australia. Now, someone would invest in Australia because let's think about an example, a country like Argentina, right? The inflation in Argentina is almost 100%, whereas the inflation in Australia is almost 3%, right? So the value of your money is getting eroded in that country because of inflation, right? So a lot of people choose to invest in assets that are a protection against inflation, like real estate. Obviously, here in Australia, very different to invest in properties in America or in Spain. There are different rules of what you can buy. And in terms of the taxes, there are different rules for all the countries, but we're talking about Australia, right? So countries like Argentina is investing into Australia because of inflation. Countries like China, they're investing into Australia for capital protection because of obviously the situation in the country. So there's a lot of attraction to Australia because of those reasons. So if you're a foreign buyer and you're looking at buying property in Australia, let's talk about what type of properties you can buy. Now, as I said in the video before, if you're a family looking to buy a house to live in, you may be allowed to buy an established dwelling, or you may not be allowed. Then you're going to have to buy a new dwelling. A new dwelling is a brand new house, a house that has just been built and completed, never been lived on. You can buy that house. Let's say you want to buy an apartment, that's fine. As long as the apartment hasn't lived on and is brand new, you may be able to buy that apartment. So there's two different types of properties, but it's very important to differentiate from established houses to brand new dwellings. If you're an investor and you're looking at investing money into Australia and renting this property out, you will not be allowed to buy established dwellings. Let me say that again. If you're an investor, a foreign investor, right, and you're looking at buying a residential property in Australia for investment purposes, you will only be allowed to buy new dwellings. Now, why does the government put that regulation in place? To promote construction, to promote the building industry, right? So the foreign investors are only allowed to buy brand new dwellings into Australia. So what are the type of properties that you can buy? Number one, an apartment. Where are the apartments located? Inner CBD areas, close to the cities. That is one option for you as an investor. What is option two? Option two as an investor could be a townhouse. A townhouse is not a family home, but is in between an apartment and a house, a townhouse. Number three, you can buy a house or a single level family home. Those properties are usually located in the outskirts of the city. What is the process from there? Now, in Australia, there are 7 major capital cities and let's call it top 25 regional cities. So there's a lot of options. There's about 15,000 suburbs. There are many multiple options in the market. You need to decide, number one, what type of property you're gonna buy. And that decision comes from your budget, understanding your budget and your strategy, right? Let's say you're in Spain and you have a budget of 500,000 Australian dollars. Option one is I can maybe buy an apartment, and I'll tell you this because I do this all the time for our clients. So I know it. I know what you can get for 500,000 in Australia as a foreign investor. Is either you can buy an apartment in Melbourne, maybe a townhouse in Adelaide, and maybe a single level house or an actual freestanding house in Perth. Once you make the decision as to how much money you want to invest, what are my options, what is my strategy, right? Because what are you going to do with the apartment when you buy it? Are you going to rent it out? There's going to be body corporate fees. There's going to be property management fees. And obviously you're going to get the rental on that property. But what is the strategy with that? If you're looking for capital growth, you need to understand the local market. If you think about Australia, people think about Sydney and Melbourne. But Sydney and Melbourne, historically, they have over the last 10 years more than doubled. Okay? So if you're an investor and you want to buy property in Sydney, Sydney is very unaffordable. Melbourne is very unaffordable. Rental yields are the lowest. So if you're a foreign investor and you're looking to maximize the return on your capital, you need to understand those dynamics. And I know this because, as I said, we do these strategies for our foreign investor clients that come through to us and ask for advice about with the different cities, the long-term performance, the rental yields, what is a different strategy. Once you have that in place, right? Let's say you've selected your property, okay? You've understood the reasons why you've chosen that type of investment, right? And choosing this type of investment, as I said, comes back from your budget, your strategy, and also your risk profile as a buyer, right? If you understand the construction game, you may be interested in potentially buying a house and building it up because you understand that. If you don't understand that and you're risk adverse and then you just want to buy an apartment near the CBD and get consistent rental income, then that might be the best option for you. But you need to understand what is your strategy and what you're trying to achieve. Now that we've discussed that first part of the process, which is the strategy part of the process, let's talk about the costs, right? If you're a foreign investor, now the step number one is apply for the Foreign Investment Review Board approval. There's a link here, and we're gonna put it in here where you can go on your own and find out all the information. You need to create a profile with the ATO. You need to create an application. Roughly, this application is a percentage of the cost of the property, but roughly on average, anywhere from $13,000 to $20,000, depending on, for less than $1 million properties is about $14,000. That's fee number one. Now, fee number two is an extra surcharge, like an extra surcharge for transferring the asset into your name as a foreign investor, right? So we've got 5% for locals. For foreign investors is roughly 7 to 9%, depending on which state you're in. Application cost, $14,000 plus the extra surcharge. Those are the two fees that you will need to pay the government for buying property into Australia. And the other cost is conveyancing cost. Now, you need a lawyer to help you in the process of buying this property. Contract reviews, she or he will represent you at the day of the settlement, and she will undertake all that process with the counterpart. So that cost is roughly anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 depending on which state you're in. That's cost number three. Cost number four, if you're a foreign investor and you don't know the market in Australia, you don't know how to negotiate, you don't know how to buy, you don't know the rules, you don't know what drives property prices, you don't have the time, you're somewhere else around the world, you need someone to help you buy the property here in Australia. That is called a property advisor. And they could charge anywhere from 1.5 to 3% depending on the cost of the property. And the last cost, which you need to take into account, is an accountant, right? You need an accountant and tax advice. We can introduce you to a team of experts that can help you clarify that information based on your situation. So, in conclusion, if you're a foreign investor and you're looking at buying property into Australia, different strategies, different options, we're here to help you. Please contact us.